My name is Bonnie Fentress. And if there's one thing I've learned the hard way, it's this. Some people don't break you all at once. They chip at you quietly, confidently, certain you'll never leave because they've convinced you that you couldn't do better. For a long time, my boyfriend Scott Rawlinson was exactly that kind of person. And on the night of our anniversary dinner, he still believed I was the lucky one in the relationship, the one who should be grateful he chose me. He didn't know I had already decided this would be the last night he'd get to say those words. Lear Nardin. The upscale restaurant he picked was glowing with warm lights and quiet music. I arrived on time. Scott, of course, walked in 45 minutes late without a hint of apology. He slid into the seat across from me like he was descending a throne. Traffic was awful. He sighed dramatically, adjusting his tailored jacket. The jewelry on him, a gold bracelet, and an expensive watch I hadn't bought either. He didn't even look at me before adding, "You wouldn't believe who I ran into today." I already knew this was the opening act to one of his monologues. I sat still, calm like I had been rehearsing for weeks. Daniela, he announced, smiling like he'd been waiting all day to say her name. She just got promoted to partner. Porsa, new condo, the works. She asked about you, actually. Oh, I murmured, keeping my voice neutral. I told her you're still, doing your thing. He waved vaguely at me as if my whole career was a dust particle floating in air. Let's not pretend it's impressive, Bonnie. But it's fine. I don't need you to be impressive. I'm the prize here. He said it with the same casual confidence someone might use to describe their shoe size. But this time, instead of defending myself like usual, I looked him dead in the eyes and said softly, "You're absolutely right." His eyebrows flicked upward, the tiniest crack in his confidence. He wasn't used to me agreeing. Not like that. He leaned back, studying me, but his ego smothered his instinct. I mean, look at us, he said, emboldened. Socially, I'm carrying this relationship, my connections, my family name, my looks. You're lucky I said yes when you asked to take things to the next level. I know, I said again with a calmness that made his smile tighten. In fact, Scott, I have something special for you. He perked up instantly. Is it the Cartier bracelet I showed you? Better, I said, signaling the waiter. Scott watched eagerly as a silver tray approached, the kind restaurants reserved for bottle service or very expensive desserts. Except on this tray wasn't a jewelry box. It was a plain white envelope. Scott frowned. What's this? Open it. He tore it open with a flourish, expecting a surprise trip or tickets or something he could brag about later. But as soon as he read the header on the papers inside, the blood drained from his face. He blinked, then blinked again. Annulment, he whispered. The entire restaurant went still. Chairs stopped moving. Forks hung midair. Even the music seemed to quiet. He looked at me confused, betrayed, furious, a child realizing the game was never in his control. What is this? He hissed. It's exactly what it looks like, I said. Annulment. On what grounds? Fraud. He stared as if waiting for the punchline. So I gave it to him. You forgot to mention you were still legally married to someone else when we got together. His face shattered completely. Then the perfect polished arrogant mask he wore every day fell clean off, revealing the messy truth beneath. 2 months earlier, while organizing documents for tax season, I had found a marriage certificate from his semester abroad in Spain. He'd married a woman named Carla Mendoza and never filed for divorce. Never annulled it, never mentioned it. He tried to gather himself, stammering that was annulled. Really? I asked, pulling out my phone. Because the Spanish authorities disagree. So does the lawyer I hired. His voice cracked. It was a mistake. For 3 months, I tilted my head. That's how long you lived with her, too. According to the apartment lease I found. Now the restaurant wasn't just watching. They were enthralled. People leaned in. Someone whispered. Scott's breathing grew sharp. You investigated me. I was doing our taxes, I replied. Your lies investigated themselves. This is ridiculous. We'll fix the paperwork. Why would I want to fix it? I asked softly. You just spent 10 minutes telling me how lucky I am that someone like you settled for someone like me. He swallowed hard. Bonnie, I didn't mean, well, I said, folding my napkin. Congratulations. You're free to aim higher now. His composure cracked so violently I thought he might knock over the table. His hands trembled. His voice rose. You planned this. No, Scott, I said quietly. You planned this 5 years ago when you committed bigamy. I'm just cleaning up your mess. Then, like a final blow, I added, and the joint card you've been using tonight, I cancelled it an hour ago. Scott opened and closed his mouth like a fish, gasping for air. The restaurant was silent, every pair of eyes on him, and in that silence, he finally understood the truth. He wasn't the prize. He was the problem. I looked at the waiter and smiled gently. I'll have the salmon, please. It was the calmest, most expensive goodbye of my life. Scott's meltdown at the restaurant should have been the climax of the story, but it was only the opening act. The next morning, my phone rang before I'd even had coffee. Diana Rollins' son, Scott's mother, appeared on my caller ID. Her name flashing felt like a warning. I answered anyway. How dare you, she spat the moment I said hello. Her voice had that brittle aristocratic tremble of someone who lived her entire life shielded by generational wealth and delusion. How dare you humiliate my son publicly like that? He humiliated himself by committing bigamy, I replied calmly. That Spanish thing doesn't count, she snapped. It was practically a college fling. The Spanish government disagrees, I said, and so does U.S. law. You little snake, her voice sharpened. You trapped him. I trapped him into already being married when he got with me, I asked. That would be quite a trick. You don't understand what an honor it was that he chose you, she hissed. The honor, I said slowly, of being his second simultaneous partner. I'll pass. She hung up on me. 1 hour later, the chaos arrived, physically honking, shouting the roar of engines. I glanced out my window. 3 moving trucks, Scott and his sister, Jenna, standing on my lawn like she'd been dragged into a war she didn't sign up for. Scott pounded on my door, screaming, Bonnie, open up. This is my house, too. I tapped my Ring doorbell and spoke through it. No, it's not. It's mine. Bought before our non-marriage, still solely in my name. Jenna turned to him. You said this place was jointly owned. It should be, he snapped as though reality simply needed to adjust to his entitlement. And where are my things? He yelled. Where's all of my stuff? I told you, I said through the speaker. Jenna has them. Jenna blinked in confusion. What? No, I don't. Check your garage, I said to her. A beat. Then Jenna muttered. Oh my God. Scott's face twisted. You put my things in her garage, he shouted. You told your sister she'd help you with anything. This is anything. Some neighbors peeked through blinds. A man walking his dog paused on the sidewalk. Scott was creating a scene, the one thing he always claimed I did whenever I stood up for myself. Projection, I suppose, is a family sport. I decorated that house, Scott yelled, voice cracking. You hung up 3 live, laugh, love signs, I replied. I removed them. The walls look better now. He was trembling with rage and embarrassment, the kind that comes from losing control of a narrative you thought you owned. I'm calling my lawyer. Great, I said. Make sure they know about Carla, the Spanish marriage, and the bigamy charges. Jenna stared at Scott in horror. Scott, you were married. That was nothing. he snapped. A mistake. For 3 months, Jenna asked. A mistake you lived with. His face contorted. He looked seconds from exploding. Too late. His father's silver Mercedes pulled up like a disgraced monarch arriving to negotiate territory after losing a war. Roland, a sharply dressed man whose confidence had been dented by whispers of an SEC investigation, stepped out. He walked toward the house, adjusting his cuffs, pretending like the whole neighborhood wasn't staring. Bonnie, he called, voice deep and authoritative. Let's discuss this like adults. I'm not stepping outside, I said through the doorbell. Say what you need to say from there. He inhaled sharply, not used to being refused anything. Look, Roland began. This can all go away. Just remarry him properly this time. Why would I remarry someone who committed fraud? I asked. It was a misunderstanding. He lived with Carla, I said. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a relationship. Roland lowered his voice. I'll make it worth your while. A pause. 50,000, I blinked. You want to pay me to remarry your son? 75, he corrected quickly. Scott didn't mean those things, he said. You're overreacting. He told an entire restaurant he was the prize, I said, and that I was lucky he settled for me. Roland clenched his jaw. 100,000, no amount of money, I said, is worth being told every day that I'm beneath someone who committed bigamy. He muttered something about knowing people, but the threat sounded hollow. The kind of thing powerful men say when they're losing power and hoping no one notices. And then, as if entitlement had a GPS signal, the social media explosion began. Scott posted a video. Tears, red face, breathy victim tone. She scammed me, he cried into the camera. She knew our relationship wasn't valid and waited until our anniversary to destroy me. The comment section was everything. Girl, you were already married, so he committed fraud and she's the scammer. Didn't you post last week calling her your practice girlfriend? Receipts plus people dug up old posts where Scott bragged about being the catch, mocked my career, and implied I was beneath him. Someone compiled them into a montage titled The Prize Exposed. It got 2.3 million views. And while Scott drowned in self-made public humiliation, I quietly did something far more devastating. I began returning every single wedding gift with a note. Thank you for your generosity. Unfortunately, the relationship was invalid due to Scott Rawlinson's existing marriage to his partner in Spain. We apologize for any inconvenience. The phone calls started instantly. His Aunt Margaret screamed at Diana for not warning her. Country club women whispered furiously. Family friends distanced themselves like the Roland carried contagion. The perfect social image Scott clung to. Cracked, shattered, done. And this was only the beginning. If Scott had any sense, he would have stopped. But entitlement doesn't go quietly. It claws, thrashes, and panics when it realizes its power is slipping away. And Scott was slipping fast. 3 days after the gift returned wildfire, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Miss Fentress, a banker said cautiously. There's a man here claiming to be your husband. He's demanding access to a joint investment account. I almost laughed. There is no joint account, I said. Yes, ma'am. That's what our system shows. We just wanted to verify. Let him know, I replied, that I've never been married legally. There was a long pause on the line, the kind that tells you a scene is unfolding on the other side of the glass. Understood, ma'am. We'll handle it. And they did. Security escorted Scott out of the bank while he screamed about discrimination lawsuits and my lying ex. Someone filmed it. Of course they did. By that night, the clip hit 1 million views. Man claims wife exists, evidence says otherwise. His reputation wasn't just cracked now. It was vaporizing. But the real blow didn't come from me. It came from a woman he never expected to hear from again. That afternoon, I received a message on LinkedIn from someone named Daniela Torres, the glamorous ex-girlfriend Scott bragged about at our anniversary dinner. Her message began politely. "Hi, Bonnie. I heard what happened. I thought you should know. It wasn't just you." Attached were screenshots, hundreds of them. Messages Scott sent her years ago. Lies he spun that looked so familiar it made my stomach tighten. He told her the same thing he told me. That his marriage in Spain had been annulled. That it had been nothing, that she was the one he truly wanted. She left him after discovering the truth and refused to take him back unless he explained the Spanish marriage. He never did. I messaged her back thanking her, but she replied one more time. "Women like us deserve better than men who rewrite reality. I'm proud of what you did. He won't change, but you did." It was strange to feel sisterhood with someone I'd never met. Stranger still that Scott never saw the pattern he created. He genuinely believed every woman he spoke to lived in a vacuum where his lies could grow without light. But sunlight was pouring in now because just when I thought his past couldn't drag him any deeper, it clawed its way up for air. Carla, the husband Scott insisted was a mistake, a fling annulled years ago. Except Carla was very much alive and very much still legally married to Scott. I received a message through a Spanish legal office later that evening. "We have been attempting to locate Scott Rawlinson for formal service for over 3 years. We understand he is currently residing in your city. Divorce papers are prepared." 3 years. Scott had been avoiding her for 3 years, but the timing, that was the gift. The service was scheduled for the most poetic place imaginable, the Rowland family annual charity gala. The highlight of their social calendar. The event Diana used to flaunt her status. The one night Scott played Prince of the Ballroom. Poetic, cruel, perfect. But Scott didn't know it was coming. He was too busy spiraling. That week, he launched his most desperate move yet. He posted a teary video claiming I had emotionally abused him, that I had manipulated him, ruined his life, and weaponized a technicality to destroy love. My lawyer sent a cease and desist within 6 hours. We also included screenshots of his own texts to me. "You're lucky I even look at you. Daniela would never have said that. Sometimes I wonder what I ever saw in you. Thank God I'm attractive or this relationship would have nothing." He took the video down quietly. No apology, but the internet wasn't quiet. Someone dug up Scott's old post calling me his starter girlfriend. His practice run, the warm-up act before he married someone on his level. 6 years of arrogance repackaged into a 90-second montage set to dramatic violin music. It went viral. People stitched it with this: "The man who said he's the prize. Bigamist energy. This dude ain't even the sample size." I didn't even have to say a word. His own digital history became his prosecution. But the moment everything clicked into place, when I finally understood the complete pattern came from an unexpected source, Carla herself. She reached out, not angrily, just tired. "Hola, Bonnie," she began. "I heard everything. I'm sorry you went through this." She told me he would file the divorce. He never did. He blocked me. He changed emails. He even told mutual friends I died in a car crash. I froze. Scott told people Carla was dead. Carla continued, "Thank you for exposing him. I will finally be able to end this chapter." For the first time, someone who'd been trapped in Scott's web longer than I had was finally getting free. And as I sat reading Carla's message, something inside me settled. A truth I hadn't fully grasped until that moment. This wasn't just my story of escape. It was the unraveling of a man who never thought consequences applied to him. He thought he could lie, hide, belittle, manipulate, and move on untouched. But every lie has a shadow, and every shadow eventually finds light. Scott's reckoning wasn't coming. It was already here. And the worst part, the part he never saw coming, was about to unfold in front of the wealthiest, most connected audience of his life. The Rowland family annual charity gala was supposed to be their crown jewel. The night Diana flaunted sophistication. The night Rowland made strategic handshakes, the night Scott strutted around like royalty. Instead, it became the night everything they'd worked so hard to hide was dragged into the light. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. By the end of the evening, I'd seen 5 different angles of the moment online. Scott was in the middle of a crowd holding court with the same smugness he always carried, silk suit, champagne in hand, smiling like he had finally regained his footing. Then a man in a dark suit approached him. Clipboard, envelope, professional. A process server. Scott Rowland's son, the man asked loudly. Scott grinned and nodded, assuming he was event staff. You've been served. Divorce papers from Carla Mendoza. The server placed the envelope directly into Scott's hand in front of donors, board members, ex-girlfriends, socialites, and half the city's elite. Someone gasped. Someone else dropped a champagne flute. Phones were already recording. Daniela's laughter could be heard in one video. A soft, disbelieving exhale followed by, "Oh my God, karma has impeccable timing." Scott's face collapsed layer by layer. The confidence bled out. The charm fell away. The prince costume turned into a paper mask melting under a spotlight. Diana rushed forward, hissing Scott smile, but he couldn't because now everyone knew. The relationship he bragged about, the fiancé he dismissed, the superiority he clung to, it was all rotten from the inside. Within minutes, the live stream spread across the internet. Gala gone wrong man. Served divorce papers in front of 300 guests. Bigamist exposed at charity event. I'm the prize guy gets served hard. And then came the interviews. Not planned, not controlled, just whispers recorded by microphones and phones. Didn't he tell people his Spanish husband died? He told me he was single. He tried that on Jenna's friend, too. Diana must be mortified. Mortified was an understatement. By midnight, the Rowland family left the gala early, escorted through a back exit, avoiding cameras, Diana shielding her face as though shame itself were contagious. But humiliation wasn't Scott's worst enemy. Truth was. The next morning, a lifestyle blogger released an exclusive. He claimed Scott offered voluntarily, desperate to tell his side. He wanted to paint himself as a victim of a clerical error, an unfair girlfriend, and international misunderstanding. It backfired spectacularly. The blogger fact-checked him in real time. Scott said, "Spanish marriages don't count here." The blogger replied, "Yes, they do." Scott said it was a weekend fling. "Your lease with Carla was for 3 months." Scott said, "I was 19 and confused." "You were 28 according to the government documents." When the interview dropped, the comment section annihilated him. "Sir, this is not confusion. This is a pattern." Man really said, "My bad. I forgot I was married." He lies like breathing. Bonnie Fentress deserves reparations just for tolerating him. Then someone found Carla's Instagram. She had posted a picture of herself at a rooftop bar in Barcelona with the caption, "Finally free." The comments exploded. "We support you, Queen Carla. He told people you were dead. What now?" Carla replied once, "Yes, he told people I died. I'm very much alive." That line alone generated memes for 3 straight days. The fallout spread to Scott's parents, too. The country club revoked their membership. Diana screamed at everyone she could. Rowland tried to threaten the board, but with the SEC breathing down his neck, he had zero leverage. Sponsors pulled out of the charity. A board member resigned. Their social circle shrank overnight. Scott tried to retreat into silence, but silence wasn't salvation. It was consequence. His job suspended him pending internal review. Friends ghosted. Even his gym buddies unfollowed him. And then came the final unraveling, the part of every story where the villain tries one last time to reclaim the narrative. He applied for a job as an assistant to Daniela. Her message hit my inbox at noon. He applied for a position at my firm. I showed HR the bigamy reports. They declined. I stared at the smiley face longer than I expected. It didn't feel petty. It felt like closure. 2 days later, I saw him with my own eyes for the first time since our breakup. A regular grocery store, not the upscale organic one he used to brag about. He was standing alone in the cereal aisle holding a box of generic flakes. When he noticed me, he froze. "Bonnie," he whispered, voice hoarse. I nodded politely. "Scott." His eyes were red, his suit cheap, his shoulders slumped. I'm sorry," he said, trying to smile, but it cracked halfway. "I shouldn't have said those things." "Which things?" I asked softly. "That you're the prize. That I was lucky you settled, that my work was beneath you," he swallowed. "All of it." I nodded again. Not cruel, not triumphant, just done. "I have nothing now," he said. "Nothing left." "That's not true," I replied gently. "You have exactly what you brought into the relationship." He blinked. I stepped closer just enough for him to hear the softness in my voice. "And it turns out," I said, "that's not nearly as valuable as you thought." He stood frozen, clutching his box of cereal as I walked away. No revenge speech, no dramatic finale, just truth. Truth, I've learned, is quieter than rage, but far more devastating. As I left the store, sunlight hit the pavement in that golden way that feels like a fresh page turning. And for the first time in a long while, I felt free. Truly free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't vengeance at all. It's simply letting someone face the mirror without you there to hold it steady. He once said he was the prize, but the reality, he was the lesson. When the dust finally settled, after the gala scandal, after the interviews, after the last desperate message Scott sent into the void, something unexpected happened. My world became quiet. Not empty, not lonely, just quiet in a way I hadn't realized I'd been craving. For the first time in years, my phone didn't vibrate with Scott's demands. No constant criticism disguised as advice. No performative apologies. No subtle reminders that I should be grateful for his existence. Instead, mornings were slow and warm. Evenings were peaceful. My mind felt like an uncluttered room with the windows open, letting in fresh air I didn't know I'd been missing. I kept waiting for the guilt to show up. The guilt women are taught to carry when they choose themselves over someone else's expectations. But it didn't come, not once. What came instead was renewal. Within a week, invitations began arriving from friends I hadn't seen in months. People Scott insisted were bad influences or not supportive of our relationship. People he quietly pushed out of my life so my world would orbit only him. They welcomed me back effortlessly. One evening as we sat by the river sipping wine from plastic cups, Jenna Scott's sister sent me a message, not a long one. Just "I'm sorry for everything he did. I should have seen it sooner." I replied. "It wasn't yours to see. He hid it from all of us." She thanked me and that was that. A small olive branch grown in the ruins of entitlement. Then came Carla, not romantically, just as a human being, reclaiming her own story. She sent a selfie from Barcelona, smiling, signature cocktail in hand, a rooftop sunset behind her. Her caption under the photo, "Divorced and thriving." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. I sent a message back. "To freedom," she replied instantly. "To truth." It felt fitting, two strangers connected only because we both escaped the same man's orbit, now wishing each other well from opposite sides of the world. And somewhere in the midst of all the healing, something else shifted, too. I found myself spending time with someone new, someone I'd met months ago before things with Scott became unbearable. Someone I never allowed myself to genuinely see because I thought loyalty meant sacrificing my intuition. His name is Marcus Hale. Calm, grounded, an engineer with warm eyes and a gentle steadiness Scott never had. He never once called himself a prize. He never compared me to anyone. He never bragged to feel bigger. He just showed up fully, honestly. One night as we walked past a neighborhood cafe, he paused and said, "You know, your work is incredible. I've always admired how precise you are." It was such a simple statement, so ordinary, so wildly different from the daily belittling I endured before. I felt a warmth that wasn't about romance, at least not yet. It was validation without cruelty, affection without ego, interest without domination. I didn't fall for him that night, but I did fall for myself, the version of me he saw, the version I used to be before Scott's voice grew louder than my own. People often assume big life changes arrive with fireworks, explosions, dramatic crescendos. Mine came with small things. A morning where I woke without dread. A walk where I didn't check my phone. A laugh that came easily instead of cautiously. A meal I ate without criticism being served alongside it. Freedom is quiet. Healing is slow. But peace arrives like a sunrise you didn't stay up to watch, but get to witness anyway. A few weeks later, I learned Scott had moved back in with his parents. His father's SEC investigation deepened. His mother stopped hosting events altogether. Their social circle shrank until it was more rumor than reality. Scott lost his job. He deleted his social media accounts. And rumor has it he's trying to rebrand himself as a life coach, which is ironic in a way that almost defies vocabulary. But none of it matters. Not in a vindictive way, not in a triumphant way, just in a distant, irrelevant way. Scott is a chapter I've closed. Not a scar, not a regret, just a story that taught me how to read myself better. He once believed I'd be nothing without him. But the truth is simpler. I was nothing with him and everything after him. Months later, I found myself back at Leonarden, the restaurant where it all began. Not to recreate the moment, not to reclaim a space, just because I happened to walk by and decided the salmon still deserved a chance. A waiter recognized me. "You look happier," he said kindly. And for the first time since the unraveling began, I realized I truly was. He seated me by the window. Warm light, soft music, no tension in the air. As I picked up the menu, I caught my reflection in the glass, not blurred by fear or doubt, not shaped by someone else's standards, just me. Bonnie Fentress, a woman who stopped waiting to be chosen, because choosing herself was more powerful than any validation Scott ever dangled over her head. Sometimes the most shocking twist isn't betrayal. It's who you become after surviving it. Healing is rarely a straight line. It loops, rises, dips, surprises you. But sometimes life hands you a moment so perfectly symbolic that it becomes the point where the past finally releases its last grip. For me, that moment came on an unexpectedly ordinary Tuesday morning. I was at a small bookstore downtown, the type that smells like old paper and patience. I ducked inside to escape the sudden rain, the kind that falls in silver sheets without warning. As I wandered between shelves, a title caught my eye. Rebuilding After Emotional Manipulation. Months ago, I would have avoided a book like that. I wasn't ready to name what I had lived through. But now, I picked it up, gently flipping through the pages with a strange sense of familiarity. Not pain, recognition. And that's when I heard my name, Bonnie. I turned. It wasn't Scott. It was a woman I hadn't seen in years, Lena, a coworker who drifted from my life when Scott started helping me manage my relationships, which really meant isolating me from anyone who saw the truth too clearly. She looked hesitant, like she wasn't sure I would want to speak to her. "I wasn't sure if it was you," she said softly. "You look different, lighter." I smiled. "I feel different." She hesitated before asking, "Is everything with Scott really done?" "I saw some things online but wasn't sure." "It's done." I said. Legally, emotionally, all of it. Her shoulders dropped in relief. I always worried about you. He had a way of dimming people. I nodded. He won't dim me again. We ended up talking for almost an hour, catching up on the parts of life I had missed while trying to shrink myself into someone Scott would approve of. When we stepped outside, the rain had already stopped. It felt symbolic of storm passing, leaving the world washed clean. That evening, I returned home to a quiet apartment that finally felt like mine again. Scott had never physically lived there, but his presence had lingered in the way I arranged things, the way I apologized for taking up space. Now the space felt honest, soft lighting, warm colors, plants I remembered to water because I no longer lived in a constant state of anxiety. As I placed the new book on my shelf, my phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Dinner Friday. Nothing fancy, just us. My heart didn't race with fear of doing something wrong. It warmed gently. I typed back, I'd love that. No performance, no pressure, just a possibility. Later that night, while making tea, I scrolled through my messages and noticed one I hadn't opened from an unknown number. My stomach didn't drop the way it used to. I opened it calmly. Bonnie, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I'm sorry for all of it. I didn't realize what I was losing until I lost everything. No name, but he didn't need one. It was Scott. Months ago, those words might have pulled me back into the cycle: hope, guilt, confusion, obligation, the traps he wove so effortlessly. Now they felt distant, like reading a line from a book whose ending I already knew. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because there was nothing left to say. Some conversations don't need closure. Some people don't need to be invited into your healed life. Silence can be an answer, too. The next weekend, I found myself sorting through old boxes. Not from Scott. Those had been returned long ago. But from versions of myself I had forgotten. A sketchbook from college. A camera I'd been too tired to use. Notebooks filled with ideas I abandoned because Scott once told me, creative stuff is pointless unless you're naturally talented. I opened the sketchbook. My drawings weren't perfect, but they were mine. I picked up the camera. It still worked. I spent the afternoon walking through the city, photographing strangers laughing in cafes, dogs splashing in puddles, street performers balancing lights in their hands. None of these moments were extraordinary, and yet capturing them made the world feel bigger, brighter. I realized something then. Scott had been a chapter, but I was the author. Weeks passed, and one evening, as I sat on my balcony, watching the pink hues of sunset melt into purple, a thought came to me. Gentle but strong. Freedom isn't just the absence of someone. It's the presence of yourself. Scott once believed he was the center of the universe and I was lucky to orbit him. But now I was a constellation of my own. A whole sky he never bothered to look up at. As I closed my eyes, letting the last warmth of the sun touch my face, I felt something I thought would take years to return. Peace. Not the fragile kind that breaks when someone raises their voice, but the deep kind that comes from rebuilding yourself on your terms. And in that moment, the story didn't feel like one of betrayal or humiliation. It felt like one of rebirth. A story of a woman who walked through fire and came out gold. A story of someone who stopped surviving love and started choosing it with intention. A story that didn't end with a man leaving, but with a woman returning to herself.